Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome back to another video with a pair of subscriber replays. Now, as some of you will be aware, a little over the last couple of weeks, a few weeks, a little bit over the summer, I did 1 or 2 streams because, well, I could. Had a little bit of time and I thought, why not? And one of the questions that I actually got asked quite a lot was, could you show some high-tier Soviet medium tanks, notably the T-62A and the Object 140? And unfortunately the answer I had to give was no, because I don't own any. The highest tier Soviet medium tanks I have are the Object 416 at tier 8, and the tier 8 premium, the what is it? T-54 mod 1. So with that in mind, I thought let's use these 2 replays and rectify that a little bit. So both of these games are going to be courtesy of Polestar Blue. Seen him play a little bit before, but I don't see any reason to let that stop us seeing him again, seeing as he has games in tanks that I wanted to show. So, in this first game, we're here on Kharkov. I probably mispronounced that. Tier 10 game, and Polestar is driving the T-62A. So this is the original Tier 10 Soviet medium tank. And he's actually in a 3-man tank platoon with, who have we got? We have Tigu in the Object 140 and Killer Chrissy in the Object 907. So the Object 140 was the second Tier 10 Soviet medium tank to be introduced into the game. And the Object 907 is actually a Clan Wars reward tank, another Tier 10 Soviet medium tank, but not one of the ones in the regular tech tree. So, as it turns out, Polestar's platoon mates have gone in a different direction, so we're only seeing this game from Polestar's perspective here. So, T-62A, I mean, all of these Soviet medium tanks, people often refer to them as kind of clones of each other. So, what are the differences? Well, they are very, very similar with very similar characteristics. And of the lot, the T-62A gets the best turret armor. A lot of the other Tier 10 Soviet mediums get these weak turret roofs, but the T-62A's turret is very, very tough. I believe it also gets the best gun handling, and overall you'd probably have to say the best gun of the lot. However, it's not all good news. The hull armor is rather mediocre. The same as the Object 140, but worse than the Object 430. And the... ouchie. Come on, one more. And... there we go, killed the bat chap. So yeah, the turret armor is very good, but things like the Object 140 get slightly more gun depression, so it's not optimal in that sense. Hello, Mr. T-54, who appears to be firing heat. And here you can kind of see the tank in action, and you can see this 100mm gun that all of the Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks get, though they do get different variations on this gun. Now, I haven't actually commented too much about what Polestar's been doing in this game, for which I do apologise. This isn't the longest game in the world, so I didn't have a huge amount of opportunity to talk about a variety of different things. I will do more in the second game, but I really wanted to just quickly mention some of the attributes of the T-62A, because this game was not so much about Polestar's performance specifically when he sent it in, but more about kind of a collective effort of the platoon. So let's just go and have a look at the post-battle results for this game, and then we'll have a look at the second one. So, as I said, this when Polestar sent it in, this wasn't really about Polestar's performance in particular, but about the platoon's performance, and I wanted to include it because it's a bit of T-62A gameplay, and I just haven't played the T-62A, so I thought it was nice to include it. So that little performance there for Polestar was second class mastery, Duelist, Fire for Effect, Spartan for bouncing a shell when he was on like pathetic amount of health, and a crucial contribution. The platoon managed to rack up a lot of kills, and crucial contribution is for, I believe it's 12 kills between the platoon mates. So if we have a look at the team results, we can see that the Tier 10 Soviet medium tank platoon came top of either team quite comfortably. Polestar managed 3,213 damage, 3 kills, 895 base experience. Tigu managed 3,741 damage, 1 kill and 940 experience in his Object 140. And Killer Chrissy in his Object 907 got 5,275 damage, 8 kills and 1,313 base experience. So, Polestar fired 21 shots, got 21 hits, 11 pens. Now, don't take that to be particularly indicative of the performance of the gun. A lot of the shots that Polestar was taking were snapshots, not fully aimed, and really chancy. They were, a lot of the enemy tanks were behind a significant amount of cover. So, don't read too much into those hit stats. Most of the damage he did was from relatively close range. Received 10 hits, of which half of them bounced. You really can get some very nice bounces off of that turret armor. 1120 damage blocked by his armor. 4 enemy vehicles spotted, 4 damage, 3 destroyed, 549 assistance damage. Tier 10 game, though, didn't make a profit with a standard account. With a premium account, he did make a profit, but still fairly marginal. So nothing too spectacular, and a reasonable amount of experience. So let's move on to game number 2. Here we are then in the second game. So this is Polestar once again, but he's driving the Object 140 this time, and he is not in a platoon. So if you are interested in these Soviet medium tanks, I have shown a game or two in the Object 430. That's the third of the regular Soviet Tier 10 medium tanks, driven by Enmate. So go and check those videos out by all means. And for the others, obviously the first game in this video was in the T-62A. This is the Object 140, so this is the second of those machines to be introduced. Now, interestingly, the gun handling, or the rate of fire, or the gun is marginally worse on this tank than it is on the T-62A. It's the same gun, but some of the stats are slightly worse. Still the same penetration and alpha damage, though. I believe also the Object 140, it might be... the speed is slightly different, though I cannot remember if it's slightly faster or slightly slower. It's very... the differences between this and the T-62A in terms of mobility are very marginal. The Object 430 is slightly more sluggish, though. You don't get quite the same turret armor as you do with the T-62A. You get more prominent cupolas and your turret roof is weaker. But you do get an extra degree of gun depression, 6 degrees compared to 5, and it seems to be for that reason that the Object 140 is often a slightly more popular choice than the T-62A, though there are people who prefer the original machine. So, here on the Swamp map, and I'm actually going to spend most of this video talking about what Polestar's actually doing. So he's not platooned up in this game, he is on his own. Hello, Mr. 110. So it will be interesting to see how I keep saying T-62A, how the Object 140 performs. Now, the turret armor is worse than the T-62A, but it's still pretty decent. So if he's hull down, certainly against lower tier targets, he still shouldn't have too much to worry about. Hello, Mr. Incautious Jagdtiger. And you can see the rate of fire working on this gun. Now, these Soviet 100mm guns do have the lowest alpha damage of any of the Tier 10 medium tanks at 320, but they do make up for it with their rate of fire. They also have, if not the worst accuracy, then let's say kind of unspectacular accuracy. 0.35 dispersion at 100 meters isn't fantastic, though it's generally enough to get the job done, as you can see here. But it's not up to the same spec as the British or the Germans, or the AMX-30 is a very accurate machine. But they do have the raw DPM advantage over most of their opponents. Not all necessarily, but most of their opponents. So we can see Polestar's been working this position. And one thing I actually find interesting, and I found interesting about the previous game as well, is that Polestar packs 20 heat shells on his Soviet medium tanks, which is quite a lot. Now, I mean, yes, the heat shells do get 330, I think it is. Yep, millimeters of penetration. Well, I've played Tier 10 medium tanks. I own the M48 pattern and the Centurion Action 10. And I've never... well, I very rarely feel the need to load any of that premium ammunition. That's not a criticism of Polestar, just find it curious. Anyway, one thing you did see there is that Tier 8 heavy tank, the 110, was able to go right through Polestar's upper front plate. Now, it was angled down a bit, but you have to bear in mind that in the case of the T-62A and the Object 140, the frontal hull armour is actually inferior to their Tier 9 predecessor, the T-54. I believe it's 100mm rather than 120, and of course you are a tier higher. So Tier 8s can often penetrate your hull. I remember managing to do it with the Pershing before the penetration got buffed on the Pershing's gun, and combine that with the fact that these machines are very low profile, of course, and that does often mean that people can be shooting down onto your upper front plate to remove some of the angling, so you do have to be a little bit careful when exposing your hull armour. It's best not to. Anyway, the game in question, the scoreline is currently 6-10, which is 7-10, okay, which is not fantastic. Polestar's put in a reasonable amount of damage and picked up 1 kill for himself, but the team are still 3 tanks down. And when you're at this stage of the game, that means you're approximately outnumbered 2-1. There are 5 tanks left on Polestar's team. Well, it's not quite 2-1, but there are 5 tanks left on Polestar's team and 8 left on the enemy team. T-49 has been spotted. Well, now it's 2-1. And Polestar gets hit by a Skoda T50 there, who manages to completely screw that up. First shot tracks Polestar, and the next 2 shots just hit Polestar's turret. The Skoda there seemed to get a little bit unlucky, poor guy. Oh well, there we go. Let's not worry too much. But there, you can see the turret front coming into play again. Like I said, turret armour isn't necessarily as good as the T-62A, but still pretty decent. So down to 7 rounds of regular APCR ammo. Of course, remember, this is a Tier 10 medium tank, and with one exception, they all fire APCR as their standard ammo. And another bit of luck there, as the Tier 9 waffle thrower shoots Polestar, but only takes out his tracks. So it's nice to have a little bit of fortune every now and then. Panther 88 executed, 3rd kill. And things are looking a little bit more even. The scoreline is 10-11. This is definitely redeemable. Polestar is flanking around, hoping to find some bad guys to shoot. And speaking of which, there's the T-54 from earlier on, but... Sorry, the T-49 from earlier on, but the T-54 Mod 1 has his number. IS-3 takes out their artillery now, though. So in this situation, you've got 1 Tier 10 and 2 Tier 8s versus 2 Tier 10s, a Tier 9 and a Tier 8, but that Tier 9 is artillery. Not saying the artillery is not a threat, but honestly the tier of that guy is, to a greater or lesser extent, kind of irrelevant. If it were the Tier 8 French artillery, it would hit as hard. It's the same gun. It's not the Tier 10 though, so no autoloader. Hurrah. Speaking of that artillery piece, oh hurrah! 334. 1 more shot and this guy is done, and he's just not reacting at all, and there's kill number 4. Evens the score lines up. So, thanks to a little bit of luck versus that Skoda and the waffle thrower, Polestar actually has most of his health remaining. Still got over 1500 HP to play with. So he can, obviously he doesn't want to, but he can take a hit or 2 if that's how things go, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. IS-3, full health, and remember, those Tier 8 heavy tanks can penetrate the hull armour of the Object 140. I mean, the IS-3 actually gets higher penetration than the 110, so if a 110 can do it, an IS-3 certainly can, and the allied IS-3 falls to the enemy IS-3, leaving this all, again, slightly awkward. T-54 Mod 1 is over there. Polestar isn't really going to be fast enough to go up and help him immediately, and I would expect that T-54 to be going down in fairly short order. Although, credit where credit's due, he's not going down without a fight. And now Polestar finds himself outnumbered and alone versus 3 enemy tanks. Gets spotted there, which is really sad. It would have been lovely if he could have got an ambush shot off on one of those guys. And it would have been great if, well, they didn't know where he was, frankly. Of the tanks left on the enemy team, Polestar can run rings around the T-110E4, should be able to keep his distance from the IS-3, and the IS-3 isn't the most accurate tank in the world, but that Leopard 1 could be problematic. Fast enough to keep up with Polestar. In fact, I think the Leopard's actually faster than the Object 140. Higher alpha damage on that gun. Remember, these Soviet 100mm guns get relatively little alpha damage, 320 compared to the 390 on the Leopard 1, and the Leopard also gets better gun depression. Object 140 does have the better armor, however, and the better DPM, and, well, Polestar was trying to be a bit sneaky, but he has been spotted. Hello, Mr. T-110E4, and that shot bounced, unfortunately. So, all the bad guys are here. First up is the IS-3, who manages to bounce on Polestar's turret. See the theme here, and Polestar executes him, but not before taking a hit from that Leopard 1. Now, if the enemy IS-4 has any sense, he'll be trying to get involved and possibly trying to flank around Polestar, but as it is, no, they're both together. The T-110E4 completely flubs his shot, and now Polestar is going to use his superior reload to take out the Leopard 1. Because the Leopard had fired before, that did mean that he did manage to get a shot off before dying, but this is where you want to be. The T-110E4 might have a turret, but the turret doesn't go all the way round. It only goes through 180 degrees, and Polestar has this guy banged to right. There we go. 3 versus 1 at the end, and still able to emerge victorious. Once again, let's have a look at those post-battle stats. Here we go then. That was enough for an ace tank, a bruiser, duelist, fire for effect, high caliber, and Top Gun medals for Polestar in his Object 140 there. And let's not forget, he was outnumbered 1 versus 3 at the end. But the enemy team didn't really make the most of that, and Polestar, well, kind of punished them for it. 7,323 damage done, 7 kills, 1,319 base experience. Shoutouts should, however, go to the enemy Leopard 1. 6,000 damage, close as damn it. Not quite enough for that win, so unlucky. How do you pronounce that name? Unlucky to Herakleon? Herakleon. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. And also a shout out should go to Grenade 2999, who managed 3,000 damage in his bottom tier T-54 first prototype for over 1,000 base experience. So well done to him as well. 33 shots fired, 30 hits, 25 penetrations. That's a little bit more typical of the performance I would expect from this 100mm gun. 7,323 damage, as mentioned, most of which was from close range, so that was not long-range sniping. 10 hits received, 3 penetrated, 7 did not. God bless that turret armor. Polestar did get a little bit lucky with some of those shots, though. And 1,760 damage blocked by his armor. 2 enemy vehicles spotted, 9 damage, 7 destroyed, and 635 assistance into the bargain. Ammunition resupply costs there were rather high because Polestar had to fire some heat ammunition, but only because he'd run out of regular APCR. So with a premium account, that was 109,000 gross credits. Once you'd taken away all of the various expenses, then that was a 31,500 credit profit. With a regular account, however, despite that being a stonking good game, that would still have been a loss of around about 5,000 credits. Anyway, there we go. Wasn't able to provide the games myself, but you guys sent me high-tier Soviet medium tanks that I could show anyway. So I hope that kind of addresses some of the questions that people were asking me in the streams about the T-62A and Object 140, and I hope you guys enjoyed those games. If you wish to send your own replays to me, upload them to whatreplays.com and send the link to me in a PM on YouTube, and I shall take a look. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.